Video games in the horror genre are games that are not in my forte usually. So, when I was searching for a classic video game that I have yet to play, the Resident Evil games are ones that I was a bit apprehensive about. I am someone who likes to take their games at their own pace and not be under pressure while doing it. And Resident Evil games are not exactly known for that kind of playstyle. But what I can do is action adventure games. And what do you know? Resident Evil 4 is the first Resident Evil game to dip its toes into that genre. So I thought, what the heck? How bad could it be? Well, bad. Just very bad. For my heart, obviously. And this was indeed a surprise. Don't get me wrong, I knew this was a Resident Evil game going in and all, but this game was notorious and was criticized for radically dehorrorizing the Resident Evil franchise by all the people that I heard from. While I was expecting horror, I thought that it was horror that I could deal with, like zombies slowly walking towards you while you being able to blast their heads off Doom style. Instead, this is what I got.
Yes. Oh my god. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh shit.
Look, I don't really have much experience with this franchise before this other than watching a gameplay on Resident Evil 2 Remake, but from all that I heard, people made it seem like this game was not scary at all. But this game is excellent with it, I would say. It knows when to horrify the player and when to let them chill. For instance, while some of the best instances in this game are when the big grotesque monsters are in the scene, I feel like the bits of the game when nothing happens goes uncredited. I found them more nerve-wracking and tension-building. One of the best instances of this was when the game introduces you to the regenerators. You go from intense action with some zombie-like enemies to inside a building where everything is quiet and still. This goes on until you pick up the keycard in the operation room, in which a regenerator is just lying on the bed. This was very well done, and I found myself muttering, "Everyone lied," under my breath each time one of these happened. Since we spoke about the regenerators, I might as well talk about the enemy roster. This game has a really good disposable amount of enemies, I would say. The main enemy you face are the Ganados, which are basically people who lost their humanity due to the last plagas, a parasite infecting them. These guys are like zombies, but they can hold weapons. While they are the fodder enemies in the game, I would not say they are uninteresting. They come in different styles like villagers, to cultists, to mercenaries. In fact, each time a new type was introduced, it took me a while to figure out that they were all the same except for maybe like a health change or whatever. But this game has more dangerous ones too, like the Gyarados, which are blind Wolverines, and the Wolfe monster thing. Speaking about the Wolfe monster thing, they are the main reason I say this game has a disposable amount of enemies, because these things were used for a single section in chapter 2-1, and then they were never to be seen again in the rest of the 5 chapters. While you could say this is a shame, I am more glad that they were not used more, because they were one of the most annoying and scariest enemies in the game. On the outside, it is packaged as a cute wolf, but in the inside, it is the worst of your nightmares. I mean, would you want more of these?
No thanks, bro.
While this game might boast a good roster of enemies, it would not be a Resident Evil game if it does not have its boss fights. And this game has them too. Just instead of being scary, they are more action oriented. Don't get me wrong, all of them are horrific and monstrous. It's just that instead of being afraid of them, I mostly was able to treat them as just bosses. For example, While each of their initial entry might spook you out, they are so much more forgiving than they look. If they get a chance to strike you at a close distance, they would choose to just stand there and let the player go. As a result, you can cheese almost all of them. And if you could not, well, you always have the rocket launcher.
Stranger, stranger. Now that's a weapon.
If I were to say which of them was my best and worst, I would say the best would go to the It in Chapter Fight 3, just because of how scary and tense it was, and the worst would go to the Salazar boss fight because his fight required precise aiming, which was impossible on a PS2 style controller. Also, special shout out to Salazar's right hand mini boss. Almost lost my pants there.
Mr. Kennedy, don't you know when it's time to throw in the towel?
Story-wise, you play as Leon Scott Kennedy from Resident Evil 2, who is now a government special agent assigned to find the president's daughter, Ashley Graham, who was kidnapped. On his journey to find Ashley, Leon comes upon an abandoned-looking village somewhere in Spain, and hell lets loose from there on. The story here is very fitting for an action game. Nothing to write home about, and sometimes even being very cheesy and not taking itself seriously. This coupled with the fact that Resident Evil 4 is an isolated experience from its previous entries means you can jump into this game first and would not feel like the story is too convoluted or feel like you missed something. The story plays in a chapter-wise manner in which you have a total of 5 chapters, in which the first 2 chapters has 3 subchapters, the 3rd and 4th chapter has 4 subchapters, and finally, with the 5th chapter having 5 subchapters, which totally equates to about 20 hours of gameplay. Because of this chapter-wise delivery, the game felt very well paced, and for someone like me who has a time limit for each game I review, I knew exactly how much I needed to play for each session. The best chapters personally for me are chapter 2, 3, and 4, as they have a really good mix of old school Resident Evil, while integrating action appropriately, like the bit where Leon and Louis Serra have to protect a house that was being swarmed by the Ganados. Chapter 5 though is where the game throws everything Resident Evil out of the window and instead opting for a high action and no ammo conservation type gameplay style. Now, if I were to talk about the difficulty of this game from an overall standpoint should not be hard. I mean, you have a third-person shooter with slow-moving enemies and animation states that makes you invisible. But because the game is tank controls, but in third-person perspective with a very low field of view, the game can become quite challenging, especially when you have a lot of enemies swarming and have to conserve ammo. So things like turning around if someone is behind you is pretty hard to do. Personally, I played the game on easy mode just because I can't stomach horror games very well, but you also have normal and professional on top of that. The main difference between professional and the rest is that professional difficulty does not have adaptive difficulty. Adaptive difficulty is when the game decides that you are having too much of a good time or a bad time, and depending on that, increases or decreases the number of loot or enemies. Personally, I never really outright felt adaptive difficulty kicking in, but looking back now as of writing the script, I can pick out 1 or 2 instances where the game did kick me down. Since I did mention the controls, I feel like I have to bring up how horrible these controls are for someone playing on the PC. This game was originally designed for the Nintendo GameCube and later ported into the PC. So keyboard plus mouse was really awkward. Aiming with a mouse was not at all precise, so I had to rely on a PS2 style controller for PC. So what ended up happening was the QTEs were all awkward and frustrating, as I had to press things like the square and circle together to dodge in boss fights and things of that like. And really, the controls are the main reason why I hated the Salazar boss fight, as I had to shoot an eye on him. but since he was constantly moving, it was really annoying and very frustrating. Eventually, I relied upon the rocket launcher, through which I cheesed the boss fight hard. So if you have yet to check out this game, just be warned of this little headache. Now, I'm not really sure where to put this little bit in the video, but I'm going to mention this here since I'm talking about the slight grievances I had with the game. And that is Ashley herself. Now, you have to escort Ashley around and protect her here and there, but overall, she's not too much as I thought initially going into the game. She takes cover when you aim and you can hide her and stuff like that, but still, the sections where I had to escort her around were the more unlikable sections for me, as I did have some instances where Ashley just got in the way of everything. While she might rank in the top best video game characters to escort, it is still an escort, and a general rule of thumb is, escort missions are not that great. Resident Evil 4 is a video game classic that managed to not only modernize the Resident Evil franchise, for the better or worse, it also managed to inspire the whole gaming scene. The game, even though is dated by its graphics, still showcases what excellent game design brings to the table. The game, bundled with its action and smithers of nerve-wracking horror, coupled with its dark and grimy art style, manages to bring people back to playing it again after all these years. While there are faults of this radical change, such as the cheesy boss fights and what it did to the franchise as a whole, I would still say this is up there among the best to this day. As of right now, there are rumors of Resident Evil 4 remake, which has led to many people being excited after a long period of deadness in the gaming industry. And if this rumor is true, I hope it is just a graphical and controls update rather than a complete revamp, as what is here is essentially golden even now. With that all being said though, I think it's time to wrap up the video, so excuse me for now as I have to get a new pair of pants.
Like